Right. Ready for the meeting?
Yep, we're all set.
Okay, we'll call the meeting in order. Will roll call, please?
Mr. Lockwood,
Yes.
Mr. Lattimore,
Yes.
Mr. Latinishin, John,
Oh, I'm sorry. Here, I'm here.
Mr. Vitale,
Present.
Mr. Marshall,
Yeah, I'm here.
Mr. Rindfleisch,
Here.
Ms. Spino,
Reading and approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. So moved. Is there a second?
Sure, second.
I'll move.
Okay. Benny seconded. Any additions or corrections? If not, all those say aye for approval. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. What we'll do now is we'll go right down to the financial audit review. Was it Elaine?
Okay. I just met with the audit committee and we went through a detailed review of the financial statements. I'd like to go through an abbreviated version with the board. However, if the board has any questions, if any member has any questions, please feel free to interrupt me or ask that question so that you have any concerns or issues answered. First of all, the audit went very well. We had no problems going through the information. We thank Tracy and her staff for having all the information ready for us. Yeah, actually, even before we got there, they provided us a lot of the information electronically, so that when we were able to make really good use of our time out at her offices. There were no significant audit entries. There was only one very small entry that was made for some CD interest. It was a minor amount, but we really thought it was important to make sure that we had everything accounted for. As we went through the testing and controls, we noted no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. The accounting records were in very good shape. For the financial statements, the independent auditor's report is an unqualified report. The financial statements are fairly stated in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. If we go to page 6, the statement of net position. For the year, the total current assets increased from the previous year from 696,000 to 804,000. The increases in the current assets consisted of cash and cash equivalents, an increase of about 90,000, as well as about $20,000 of pilot payments. The amounts for pilot payments were actually shortly after the year end and paid to the different taxing jurisdictions. Investments decreased during the year. Your investments consist of long-term CDs. You had cashed in one of the CDs and you were actually going to get a better rate than at a savings account. So that money was actually moved from investments up to cash and cash equivalents. At the end of the year, your total assets were a little bit over $1.5 million. Your liabilities, your total current liabilities is $67,000. And your net position was $1,562,000. So your total liabilities and net position of $1,569,000. The next page, page 8, the statement of revenue and expenses. This year, as far as administrative fee income, your income was at $86,926. It was up from the previous year, upset from $74,000. Your operating expenses were at $58,456, giving you an operating income of $28,470. So you had a good year with additional fees this year. As far as your expenses were pretty much same as the previous years with the exception of property taxes. It increased from about 2,500 to 18,000. Your non-operating income, you have interest income of 12,000. This year you had a really great rate for some of your CDs and savings accounts. So that really generated an additional amount of interest income for you this year. I don't know whether we're going to continue to see that. I think some of those rates that you had last year have already gone down. But you really were able to capitalize some good income for the year of 2019. We take your operating income and your non-operating income. Your change in that position for the year was about $44,000. So you had a very positive year for CCIDA this year, or CCIDA this year. As far as the notes to the financial statement, there was one accounting change that you had to make. The Financial Accounting Standards Board issued topic 606 for revenue recognition. Under accrual method account, we adopted that, or you adopted that, and are recognizing revenue under that standard. That was the change probably for accounting purposes for your organization. Everything else looked very good. We had no problems. No, as I said, problems with the testing. The financial statements are in very good shape. Any questions from the board?
This is Herb Marshall again. I apologize. I didn't get to the audit committee meeting on time. The increase in the tax liability reflects the new property that we bought, and that our attorney didn't get us in the tax exempt status. Probably, is that not right?
That's unfortunately correct.
Oh, no.
Okay, thank you.
Just put it on the record every time.
Any other questions for in regards to the audit?
So
Thank you.
we just need to approve it.
Do you want her to come early tomorrow for the meeting?
No.
Come at what time?
Okay, so
Is there a motion to approve the audit report?
So moved.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Motion is made and seconded that we approve the report. Is there any discussion, questions? Lacking any, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Not hearing any? Carried? Thank you, Elaine.
Okay, thank you. Have a great meeting.
Thanks, you too. Okay, back.
good fun. So we also have Mike Beckner on the line. I don't know if you want to go ahead and work or do the Sun East piece of it.
Okay. Where is he on this?
He's under unfinished business, letter A.
Okay, thanks.
This is an authorizing resolution. We did hold a public hearing a couple weeks ago. The second, thank you. And there were a number of folks from the community that did come to the public hearing. Herb was there. I think Paul was also there. So all in all, I think there's some general agita about pilots in general, and a general feeling that projects of this nature or otherwise should be paying a full tax liability, but there wasn't necessarily any specific dissent to the project. Herb and Paul, do you have anything to add on how that went?
This is Herb. At the meeting, I think our board should know that their supervisor and several of their board members were very concerned with what appears to be the new state regulations about towns not having to approve these projects, that the state in a method to hurry the process could do the approval. And they were concerned that one of the few things the towns have any control over anymore is their land use, and they wanted to know what we might do about that. Our attorney said talk to your state representatives, but I thought that we still had the ability to not give the tax credit if we chose to. And I think that's something that might come up in future proposals. My view of the meeting was they were basically in favor of this, but they didn't want the whole town to turn into a solar farm.
On that note, or I'm not sure if, and maybe Herb, you've read the legislation, but are you interested in kind of hearing my rundown of what I've heard from my attorneys and reviewing the legislation, kind of what's taking place in New York, or are you up to speed on that?
So, yeah, I would like to know who's speaking, please.
Sorry, this is Mike Beckner with Sun East.
Oh, okay, yes, I would.
Yeah, so it's the council we use is Young Summers out of Albany. It's kind of interesting what's taking place in New York. So there's kind of a threefold legislative process that's being kicked around, and in all likelihood, it sounds like it's going to be approved. On one hand, you have the state trying to expedite the Article 10 permitting process, which has been, just to put it eloquently, less than efficient, where this was a state process that came out in 2011, I believe, and there's been one project in the whole state permitted through that process since 2011. And that state process applied to projects that are greater than 25 megawatts in size. This is a 20 megawatt project. The second prong of that legislation was to propose the state trying to expedite the local permitting, which I don't think any developer in their right mind will opt to go through the state, because at the end of the day, the local community is the driver of the project, even though justifiably so. The town board was concerned about that aspect. I don't think a developer will do it, because if you go through the state's still going to ask the community what they think about it. And if the local community is against the project, it's just not going to move forward. But then the third prong of that legislation, which is pretty radical considering the pilot guidance that has been, put out by the state, and almost every county except I believe Ontario has adopted a pilot program. The third prong was a forced pilot that's calculated on the net present value of future revenue from the project. And that calculation hasn't been really run to ground. All of this is pretty new. So at any rate, it sounds to me like this is going to get passed. But going to your point, and really more importantly, the town of Ledyard's concern, I don't think anybody is going to opt to go through a state process versus go through the local town's process. It just doesn't make sense. I mean, if the town doesn't want the project, there's not going to be a project permitted. But anyways, that's kind of my 2 cents on the legislation and where it goes.
Am I not correct that these projects are not viable without a pilot?
No, you're 100% correct. Whether it's wind, whether it's solar.
And if we have the final say on granting a pilot, even if you're right and nobody goes, we would still have the final say as to granting the pilot, and that would make or break the project, right?
Correct. If you told me during this meeting, we're not going to give you a pilot, the project's dead.
You'd
New
go
York
home.
State taxes, New York State taxes are high enough that this is what allows power plants to be built. I mean, it goes back to deregulation, where National Grid, Niagara Mohawk, NYSEG, whoever. It's the reason that deregulation occurred, because they didn't want to take the risk of the outlay of cash to develop power plants and possibly have them not move forward. So then it transitioned to the private sector. But yeah, absolutely. If you didn't issue a pilot, we can't build the project.
Thank you. I just wanted the board to know, because most of them weren't there, that was a major issue that came up with the town of Ledger. Thank you.
Hi, this is Andy. Yeah, we've had a similar discussion in Springport, and home rule is obviously important to the towns. But I think as long as the towns are agreeable and the residents are agreeable, I think we would be agreeable. If the town was opposed, then it would be
A different story.
different story, right?
Well, and just, I've been going through this now since July with the town, and I've permitted wind projects throughout New York State. I will say that this has actually been the least opposition to a project I've ever worked on. We had one individual in the entire town that was opposed to the project, a neighbor. But other than that, I'll be honest with you, it's been pretty smooth sailing.
What was the opposition? Not in my backyard?
Yeah, and the irony of it is she was a lawyer for Cornell, and she represented the Cornell project, which is right across the street from the town hall. So it was kind of, there was certainly some irony there, but at the same time, basically her argument was, I don't want to look at it. And so we agreed to plant additional vegetation to conceal the project. And so far, that seems to have appeased her. But yeah, having one person against the project is not normal for me. I typically have busloads against a wind project or something like that. So.
Oh, that's great.
Trace?
I've never done this telephone thing before, so I don't know what I'm doing. But if there's nobody actually at the meeting that was at that other meeting, I would make a motion to approve the pilot for this project.
Second, Andy.
Okay. Yeah, Herb, I was out of town, so I didn't make it. You've heard the motion. Does anyone want it read to them, the resolution?
On page 3, it says that Wayne County, probably should make sure it says Keeler County.
Oh, I thought we fixed that.
We fixed it in all our policies. I might have page 3 here.
Right at the top of the page.
Yep, we'll fix it.
Okay. Is there any other discussion on the resolution?
If I have one other thing, I'm not doing this very good here. One thing they brought up was their concern that they had not reached an agreement yet for a bond, or if the project went defunct, to make it back whole. If you could ask the gentleman, has that been put together to their satisfaction?
Yeah, so the one outstanding issue on the project receiving a permit is the decommissioning bond. What the discussion has been based around is for the bond, we've excluded salvage value because the project components do obviously have value. The town didn't want to exclude salvage value. So we're in the process of going back and forth. I think we've reached an agreement, and they're coming back to me with a decommissioning plan. Obviously, a markup of the decommissioning plan. Obviously, things have kind of slowed down given the state of the union these days. But I think we're going to be there. But in any event, whether, the pilot is moot if we don't get a permit. So I don't think that's something that should hold you guys up unless you think otherwise.
I would just add to my motion, subject to you and the town reaching an agreement on the closing thing.
That's totally fair to me. I'm completely fine with that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anybody have an objection to adding that into the motion? If not, any other discussion? Would you do a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Lockwood,
Yes.
Mr. Lattimore,
Yes.
Mr. Latinishin,
John?
Sorry. Yes.
Mr. Vitale,
Yes.
Mr. Marshall,
Yes.
Mr. Rindfleisch,
Yes.
and Ms. Spino's absent.
Okay, the motion is,
Could I add one more thing, just because I think for solar this is kind of new in the county, and just wanted to throw out there, and I'm doing this with every other county I work in. So with the pilot being approved, we do the actual closing prior to issuance of a building permit, because there's a 1% of CapEx administrative fee that goes to the county, which turns into about $250,000. And maybe it's more appropriate, I just talked to Tracy about this, but wanted to throw it out there. Are you guys comfortable with us actually doing the closing documentation on the pilot just prior to issuance of the building permit versus, say, doing it immediately? Is that acceptable?
This is Rick Galbato. Tracy and I would have to check with Justin on that, get back to our transactional counsel.
Yeah, but we would normally, so we wouldn't normally do a closing immediately. We would wait for any other closing on financing to happen and do it all at once is the typical procedure, if that helps. But we can ask about the permitting.
So I'm sorry, could you say that again? It broke up a little bit.
So generally our process is to do the closing with any other closings that are happening. So we would wait until the financing closing happens so that we can do it at the same time. So we'll check about the permit in particular, but the general procedure is not to close on our benefits immediately. It's to wait until there's another closing.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, just let me know, Tracy. Again, all I'm trying to do is defer the spend of cash until shovels are going in the ground. So thank you.
Yeah, so typically we would just combine it with everything else into one closing for streamlining purposes.
okay, the motion passes. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Anything else on that, Trace? Okay, back to our original agenda. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Bills and communication?
Yes, so the first bill is the NICEAG bill. NICEAG has not billed us since December. I had to call to get this one. And so it's December through February. And
Geez, I had trouble with the farm too.
yeah, it was very strange. But the
Yeah,
total.
they did church too, same thing.
Huh.
NICEAG just decided not to bill anybody for a while.
First I have a $7,000 bill, and then they bill me for the next month for $1,200. You know,
Clearly something went wrong.
we had calm. Sorry.
It's okay. The total from December through February was $442.08.
That explains why it was high.
Yes. The next two bills are from the Probst Group. The total from both bills is $20,770. And I'm not sure if this is the last one we should be receiving from them.
If not, there should only be one more right now.
Okay. And then we have the CCIDA Q4 invoice. The CCIDA fee share was corrected, so the total for this invoice is $11,612.40. Then the last bill presented is from the citizen. It's for the public hearing notice for Sunny Solar, and that was $50.60.
Is there a motion? We already have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Who
Okay,
was the motion?
Benny. Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion on paying our bills? Roll call vote since we're on Skype or whatever you call it.
Yes, Mr. Lockwood,
Yes.
Mr. Lattimore,
Yes.
Mr. Latnishin,
Yes.
You can take it up.
Mr. Vitale,
Sure, yes.
Mr. Marshall,
Yes.
Mr. Reinflesh,
Yes.
Ms. Bianca.
Okay. That's approved. Thank you. Report of treasurer.
So on the profit and loss, there's two included in here. There's one for January, one for February. For January, we had interest from savings accounts and CD accounts totaling $524.67. We had the audit prep bill, $2,000 on there, taxes on the property, the $6,432.54, and then the probes bills totaling $18,650. And on the February profit and loss, we had interest accrued from savings and CD accounts totaling $409.52. And we have a bill from the probes group, $2,120. That's included in the $20,000 that I already mentioned. It's just separated by month. And then we have the $50.60 from the citizen. Yes, so it's been almost 6 months, and so in order to not have an inactivity fee on the savings account, we need to transfer a balance to checking. I was just going to do $5 just to keep it from accruing that.
Okay.
And then the invoice disbursement report for the pilots. We have received pretty much all of the pilot payments except for Inns of Aurora. They are working on that payment.
Is there a motion to approve the treasurer's report?
So moved.
Motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the treasurer's report? Lacking any, want to do the roll call since we can't?
Yep, Mr. Lockwood,
Yes.
Mr. Lattimore,
Yes.
Mr. Latnishin,
Yes.
Mr. Vitale,
Yes.
Mr. Marshall,
Yes.
Mr. Reinflesh.
Yes.
Okay, that's approved. Thank you. Any other reports from you?
Sorry.
No, I'm
You're
done.
talking to her.
Okay. Unfinished business.
So, just a couple of updates. One is that we did get the preliminary engineering report out to the DEC. We followed up with them recently. They had not had a chance to review it yet, so we're still waiting on them to get back to us with their decision about the project, and that will allow us to go to the town in EDA. So we're in a holding pattern with DEC on the preliminary engineering for the sewer. Obviously things are getting a little chaotic with everything going on, and a couple of things that we are working on here in-house is we're doing a lot of communication about how to continue supporting local businesses, a lot of sharing information with businesses about policies, procedures, resources that they can utilize. I'm about to go talk to Ways and Means. CCIDA is working on using our microloan program to establish an emergency loan fund, just small loans, not a ton. It's not going to be meant to replace revenue or cover operating for 2 or 3 months. It's going to be very small amounts, but just something to help businesses that need a little stopgap or, want to pay their rent for a month or two to relieve a little pressure on their cash flow. So hopefully we'll be able to push that out in the next 24 to 48 hours and at least some level. But we only have $12,000 in our microloan program, so we are looking for other ways to put some funds into that program so we can help more businesses and maybe provide a little bit higher. But we're looking to provide very favorable terms to the businesses, deferred payment schedule, no interest, waive the application fee, etc. So we're trying to make it very flexible and very accessible, even though it might not be a lot of money. So more to come on that in the next couple of days. And then beyond that, it's just trying to respond to needs as they arise from the business community. So a lot of things that we were planning to do are moving online or being postponed. Our State of the City and County Luncheon is being postponed at this point until we have a better idea. We have a new date on the books, but we're going to feel things out before we announce a final date on that. So we're just feeling it out as we go, taking it event by event. We might still do some educational seminars via webinar. So we're just trying to figure out how to still add value for businesses in the community and trying to communicate as much as possible about what's going on. So I guess this agenda changes a little bit under upcoming events. State of the City and County, you can cross off. So there's just been a lot going on in that regard. Danielle was supposed to be going to a training next week in Buffalo. That's been moved online as well. So we're finding that some of our travel is getting canceled or in-person things are getting canceled, which I guess saves us some money, but it's just a little bit different. So we're doing the best we can to be supportive and responsive, but obviously things change on a day-to-day basis. So our team is still working. We're scheduling 3 people a day to keep the office open and everybody else is working remotely. So everyone is available. It just might be easier to reach them by phone or email. So that's where we are right now.
Okay. Questions?
I'd like, this is Herb again, I'd like Tracy to push that sewer thing so that we come to a conclusion on it sooner than it looks like we're doing.
Good luck.
Yeah, we're continuing to communicate with the DEC. So we're doing what we can.
You're doing all you can. Okay, thank you.
Imagine they're running a scouting. Okay. Any other on that? No business. Cougar Milk Ingredients mortgage modifications.
Did we get a resolution for this?
Do it last month.
We did something a month or two ago.
Did we need one?
I don't know. Justin was going to let us know. Did he send one? Okay, so basically what's going on is Cougar Milk Ingredients is moving forward or was planning to move forward with their next phase of buying some additional equipment. They're doing some financing or some refinancing. Since we recently had done something, Justin wasn't sure if we needed approval from this body to even do the mortgage modification. It's just us signing off on the mortgage modification. So I guess, they're buying an additional dryer. So it's equipment purchasing at this point. They're doing a little bit of construction within the building to make space for it. But it's a pretty sizable project. I think, what was it? $26 million. So they just needed our CCIDA sign off since the pilot CCIDA has an interest in the building in relation to the pilot. So I suppose if we could, if folks are comfortable, maybe just make a motion so we have it on the record. If we're comfortable approving a mortgage modification for their continued expansion. There's no benefits involved. There's not a mortgage recording tax. It's just us signing off on the paperwork.
Well, that's great. So we'll.
There's a second?
I would only add that it needs to be contingent upon our attorney's approval
Fair enough.
and director.
So that's a second.
Sure.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion about mortgage modification? Lacking any? We roll call vote, please.
Mr. Lockwood,
Yes.
Mr. Lattimore,
Yes.
Mr. Latnition,
Yes.
Mr. Vitale,
Yes.
Mr. Marshall,
Yes.
Mr. Reinflush.
Yes.
Okay, all people voting aye. It's carried. Thank you.
So we just did the report of the audit committee more or less. Anything else the audit committee wants to add at this point?
We need an executive session.
I don't know, do we?
I don't know. You got it on here.
It's always on there.
It's always on there.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
Just
why I'm
if it's
asking.
needed. If it's needed, does anybody need an executive session?
Do you want to give us an update on the factory in Aurelius?
Okay, so BCS, which owns TRW.
Yeah, I couldn't remember the name.
Or had purchased, acquired, that feels so long ago now, oh my gosh. So BCS, which had acquired TRW, they were doing a exploration of their North American footprint. They were looking at both the Auburn facility and their Minnesota facility with the intention of closing one or both and consolidating into one of those or on a greenfield. Unfortunately, we were not successful in that bid. We did put together a very competitive package, including state and local resources. And, you know, between all the different things that go into a decision like that, it seems that there were a lot of underlying things that made them to decide to stick with the Minnesota plant. So that facility will be closing likely by the end of the year. Now, the CCIDA staff is focused on working with our community partners around workforce and making sure that we're helping the workforce transition into other employment. We have had some other manufacturers reach out to us and say, you know, whenever we can get in there to start talking to some of their people, we'd like that opportunity. And BCS has offered to be helpful in that process. So we'll be working with BCS and local partners to try to facilitate that process and make sure that as many people as possible transition smoothly into new opportunities. We do know that a lot of our manufacturers are struggling to fill their positions. There's 200 people there, so I'm not gonna pretend that everyone is gonna have a smooth transition, but we're gonna do the best we can to make it as smooth as possible for as many people as possible. And we think that we may be able to access some training dollars for people that might be looking to switch careers or switch into a new industry. So we're gonna bring all resources to bear for the workers. And there has been some initial interest in the building here and there. So we are also taking inquiries in the building and equipment.
So they're not even gonna take the equipment?
No, they are not gonna take the equipment.
Huh.
Maybe bits and pieces, but it sounds like most.
Are they going to sell the real estate or do they not know yet?
I think that is their plan in the long term. They obviously need to get to the point where they're kind of closed, they're shut down, but they are interested in having conversations with potential buyers.
They had a pilot on that at one time, but that's long gone, right?
Yes.
Any other discussion to come before the board?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We're all-
Motion to adjourn has been made. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
I
Any opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for making it through the technical stuff.
Right.